Some stories begin with a crown, others with a scandal. This one? It started with a handbag. London, February 14th, 2026, Valentine's Day, a city draped in winter fog and whispered secrets. And somewhere in the marble halls of a luxury fashion house, a single question was being asked. How does a handbag disappear from one royal's closet and reappear on another's arm halfway across Europe? This wasn't just any handbag, this was a Balenciaga cash crocodile embossed clutch, limited edition. Hand embossed, monogrammed with initials that didn't belong to the woman carrying it. The bag was commissioned weeks earlier by Zara Tindall, Princess Anne's daughter, for the Women and Economic Leadership Gala. A statement piece, a symbol of her quiet rise in both fashion and influence. It was reserved, paid for, waiting in Balenciaga's London showroom under her name. But it never made it to the gala. Instead, it was spotted 3 days later in Paris, on the arm of Meghan Markle. Walking into a closed-door fashion meeting, head-to-toe Balenciaga, cameras clicking, PR teams scrambling, and within 48 hours, an image began circulating inside the fashion house's inner circles. Not on Instagram, not in the press. Just between executives, stylists, and people who know when something's gone very, very wrong. The handbag wasn't borrowed, it wasn't gifted, it was taken. Or at least that's what the whispers said. And whispers in the world of royals? They have a way of becoming earthquakes. Let's rewind for a moment. Because to understand how a handbag became the spark that ignited a royal Cold War, you need to understand the women at the center of it. Zara Tindall is not your typical royal. She doesn't carry a title. She didn't want one. Her mother, Princess Anne, made that choice decades ago, believing her children would live freer lives without the weight of Her Royal Highness stamped on their birth certificates. And Zara? She's thrived. Olympic equestrian, mother of 3, wife to rugby legend Mike Tindall, entrepreneur. She's built a life on her own terms outside the palace gates, but with one foot firmly planted in royal soil. She doesn't chase headlines. She doesn't need to. When she walks into a room, people notice. Not because she demands it, but because she's earned it. Steady, composed, unshakable. The kind of woman who can calm a spooked horse with a whisper and shut down a tabloid rumor with silence. And then there's Meghan Markle, once the Duchess of Sussex, once the woman who walked down the aisle at Windsor Castle while the world watched, once the face of modernization, diversity, and change within the British monarchy. But that was years ago. Since stepping away from royal duties in 2020, Meghan has been building something else. A brand, a platform, a narrative. And at the center of that narrative is one constant theme. I was wronged, I was silenced, I was cast out. Some believed her, some didn't, but everyone was watching. And now, in February 2026, those two worlds, Zara's quiet dignity and Meghan's loud defiance, were about to collide. The handbag incident should have been nothing, a logistical mix-up, a misunderstanding. Balenciaga even issued a quiet apology to Zara's team, calling it a regrettable error. No police report was filed, no public statement made. Zara, ever the professional, chose not to escalate. She wore something else to the gala, smiled for the cameras, moved on, or so it seemed. Because behind closed doors, something shifted. Zara didn't speak publicly, but she didn't stay silent either. Through her private secretary, she made a firm, respectful request to Balenciaga, an internal investigation. She wanted to know how a reserved, monogrammed item ended up in someone else's possession. Someone who, allegedly, had no active commercial relationship with the brand, and Balenciaga, they started asking questions too. Within 48 hours of that request, another image began circulating. Not on social media, not in tabloids. Inside Balenciaga's legal and branding teams. It was Meghan, in Paris, at a PR firm's offices on the left bank, holding Zara's handbag. And suddenly, the brand's executives were in damage control mode. Meghan had been in talks with Balenciaga, rumored ambassadorship, sustainability line, fashion collaborations, all unofficial, all verbal, all very close to being signed. But now, those talks were quietly postponed, contracts put on hold, meetings canceled without explanation. The response was swift, the message was clear, something wasn't right. Here's where it gets interesting. Because while Zara said nothing publicly, Meghan did the opposite. Within 24 hours of the internal Balenciaga leak, Meghan's team dropped a glossy teaser video. Love with Meghan, a new fashion initiative. Clips of her in Paris, mood boards, close-ups of accessories. And right there in the center of one shot was the handbag. The same handbag. Zara's handbag. To some, it looked like confidence. To others, it looked like provocation. A fashion publicist briefed on the situation put it bluntly. The handbag wasn't a coincidence, it was a flex. A way to say, I can still command attention, I'm still relevant. But the fashion world wasn't convinced. Behind the scenes, Balenciaga's credibility concerns were growing. Meghan had been at Paris Fashion Week. She'd been photographed in Balenciaga head to toe, but here's the thing, she was never officially invited, not by the brand's internal team, not on their guest list, not on their ambassador shortlist. She'd shown up, on her own. And now, with the handbag incident swirling, executives were asking a harder question. What else had she claimed that wasn't true? Let's talk about Zara and Meghan's history, because this wasn't the first time their paths had crossed or clashed. For years, Zara Tindall kept her distance from Meghan Markle. Not openly, not dramatically, just quietly. At royal events, she'd turn away. At the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022, photos captured Zara's body language during the Sussexes' arrival. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't engaging, she was facing the other direction. At Prince Philip's memorial, she avoided eye contact entirely. Why? According to family friends, Zara found Meghan exhausting. Theatrical, strategic, everything Zara wasn't. While Meghan played to the cameras, Zara avoided them. While Meghan gave interviews about her struggles, Zara kept her head down and worked. Different women, different values, different worlds. And Zara wasn't alone. Her mother, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, the woman who's completed more royal engagements than any living royal, had her own quiet opinions. Anne never publicly commented on Meghan, not once. But her absence from any meeting, event, or gesture involving the Duchess of Sussex since 2020 spoke louder than any statement could. Anne is known for two things, her unshakable work ethic and her ability to read people. And according to those close to her, she'd read Meghan early on. Not with hostility, not with cruelty, just with clarity. She knew what she was looking at. So when the handbag incident exploded, Anne didn't need to say a word. She simply sent a message through private channels to Balenciaga. Do what is right with dignity. Translation? The monarchy doesn't issue ultimatums, but it remembers disrespect, and it doesn't forget betrayal. Here's what separates women like Zara and Anne from someone like Meghan. It's not bloodline, it's not title, it's understanding power. Anne has spent over 50 years in public service. She's the hardest working royal, the most respected, the least flashy. She doesn't seek attention. She doesn't need validation. She just shows up, does the work, goes home, repeat. Zara grew up watching that, learning from it, and she's become the same kind of woman. Steady, reliable, unshakable. She doesn't fight in tabloids. She doesn't throw tantrums. She doesn't need to. Because she knows something Meghan never learned. Real power doesn't need a microphone. A retired courtier put it perfectly. They don't fight in the press, they wait. They let the institution speak for them. And in this case, it would. And it did. Paris, February 15th, 2026. The email arrived at 9 a.m. Central European Time. Subject line, contractual freeze, Meghan Markle. Balenciaga's senior legal team had made a decision. All pending and informal agreements with the Duchess of Sussex were suspended, not cancelled, not announced, just paused. The reason? Issues surrounding product access and brand alignment require full review. It was corporate speak, diplomatic, vague, but behind the scenes, it was a thunderclap. Meghan Markle, once whispered about as the potential face of a new luxury sustainability line, had just been quietly dropped. No press release, no explanation, just silence. It was a calculated move, a former brand manager said. They wanted to disengage without drama, but Meghan didn't give them that option. Within 48 hours, Meghan's team released a series of Instagram stories, no names mentioned, but the message was clear. She hinted at misogynistic narratives and institutional sabotage. She positioned herself as the victim, again. It's the same playbook, a palace source said, victimhood over accountability. But this time, something was different. People were tired. While Meghan scrambled to control the narrative, Zara did the opposite. She said nothing. Instead, she attended the Cartier British Polo Awards in Gloucester, white tailored suit, Victoria Beckham's upcoming collection, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry, effortless. The photos went viral, not because she was trying, but because she wasn't. Fashion critics called it controlled elegance. modern restraint, aristocratic ease. A Vogue UK editor summed it up. Zara doesn't chase the spotlight, but when Meghan tried to manipulate the fashion world into a loyalty contest, Zara just stood still, and the world moved toward her. A week later, Harper's Bazaar UK confirmed they'd approached Zara for a cover feature. She declined, citing family commitments, but the message was sent. In the war for public perception, Zara wasn't fighting. She'd already won. Behind the scenes, Princess Anne was moving too. Not loudly, not publicly, just strategically. Senior royal staffers confirmed that Anne initiated a quiet family review. The topic? How royal-adjacent figures were aligning with commercial entities. The timing? Right after Meghan's alleged misuse of royal references in brand negotiations. It was Anne's way of drawing the line, a longtime palace advisor said. Not through press conferences, through policy. She knew the press would twist her words, so she used procedure instead. Anne also reactivated her personal advisory group on public image. The group had been dormant since Queen Elizabeth's passing. But now? They had a new project, elevating Zara, Lady Louise Windsor, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, as quiet ambassadors of the crown. Translation? While Meghan shouted the real royals were being reshaped, repositioned, reinforced, and Meghan, her world was starting to crack. The Archewell Foundation, her and Harry's nonprofit, faced fresh scrutiny. The U.S. Internal Revenue Service opened inquiries after leaked memos suggested inconsistencies between reported expenses and actual project output. Tyler Perry, once her most reliable ally, reportedly refused to extend further financial help. Worse, her Paris press tour flopped. It felt off-brand, one fashion PR executive said. Meghan wanted to be seen as an innovator, but the industry sees her as a disruptor, and not in a good way. For the first time since leaving the royal family in 2020, Meghan's influence had plateaued. The luxury brands she once courted were now wary. Invitations dried up. And without Harry by her side, who'd reportedly returned to the UK for private legal discussions, Meghan looked increasingly isolated. Her social media posts became erratic, one moment empowerment quotes. The next, cryptic warnings about unspeakable truths she might be forced to reveal. Meghan's always seen exposure as her weapon, a former Sussex aide said. But this time, the room isn't afraid anymore. By mid-February, the divide was undeniable. The royal family hadn't issued a single official statement, but the message was deafening. Lines had been drawn, sides chosen. In the quiet rooms of Bagshot Park and Windsor's private courtyards, conversations turned deliberate. Zara Tindall, once considered a non-working royal, was now at the center of a cultural realignment. Not through palace decree, but through public dignity. She had done nothing, and that was everything. It was Lady Louise Windsor who made the first visible move. The morning after the Paris incident exploded online, Louise was photographed stepping out of the back entrance of Zara's London flat. Navy coat, beret, no cameras, no statement. But for those watching closely, the image said everything. Louise and Zara shared a bond. Both raised outside the working royal spotlight. Both understood soft power. Both knew how to stay silent and still be heard. Later that week, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, hosted Zara and Louise at a private equestrian event in Oxfordshire. No press, no social media, but sources confirmed it was more than family leisure. It was about stabilizing the narrative from within, a palace press officer said. Sophie is the bridge between generations. When she moves, people pay attention. Sophie had been watching Meghan's behavior toward Zara shift from petty to public, and she wasn't impressed. According to one Archewell staffer, Meghan lost her mind when she learned Cartier had asked Zara, not her, to co-host the upcoming Windsor Gala. She immediately reached out to her network, pushing for a competing media campaign. It backfired spectacularly. Desperate, Meghan turned to her last remaining royal connections, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. The York sisters had once been sympathetic, even supportive, but by 2026 their tone had cooled. Meghan invited them to a private dinner in Mayfair. The stated reason? Reconciliation. The real agenda? A coordinated public statement defending her right to pursue luxury partnerships without palace interference. Beatrice declined. Eugenie arrived late, stayed 40 minutes, and left in silence. She was baiting them, a former royal liaison said, trying to drag them into her feud with Zara and Anne. But the York sisters are survivors. They know what happens when you pick the wrong moment to speak. To palace strategists, Meghan's approach was insulting. "You can't manufacture proximity," one source said. "Zara earned her place through consistency and credibility. Meghan keeps trying to leapfrog the hard part." Meanwhile, Princess Catherine said absolutely nothing, but her silence rang louder than any press release. At a London charity gala on February 12th, one of her first major appearances following health treatment, Catherine wore a restructured ivory gown first worn by Queen Elizabeth II in 1969. The dress had been archived for decades. Its re-emergence was deliberate. "It was a signal," a royal fashion historian noted. "Continuity, legacy, whose side history is on." Catherine and Zara have rarely been photographed together privately, but insiders confirm they share an unspoken respect. Catherine values discretion, Zara embodies it. "The Duchess didn't need to comment on Meghan's latest meltdown," a palace aide said. "She let a dress do it for her. Elegance has never needed a microphone." Meghan kept posting, cryptic, defiant. "I was never invited to their table because they knew I'd build my own." But the response was muted. The public, once captivated by the drama, had begun to tire. "She mistook headlines for loyalty," a British editor said, "and loyalty doesn't trend. It endures." By mid-February, UK media outlets began shifting coverage. Tatler, The Telegraph, once deferential to Meghan's Hollywood halo, they now published neutral to critical opinion pieces. Zara, on the other hand, was quietly praised. Her presence at a Cardiff medical fundraiser raised over £2 million for pediatric research. Her name was floated as a potential ambassador for British Paralympic equestrian programs. She didn't seek headlines, they found her. Even internal palace reports confirmed the shift. "There is institutional rebalancing underway," read one leaked memo from the Lord Chamberlain's office. "Certain relationships must be reprioritized in the public interest." Translation? Zara, Sophie, and Louise were steady hands. Meghan, a reputational liability. Princess Anne's response came not in a statement or interview, but in a meeting, February 7th, 2026. Behind the fortified glass doors of Clarence House, no press, no photographers. Those in attendance called it the Restoration Briefing. The subject? Meghan Markle. The objective? Containment without contamination. Anne, the most senior royal by service, delivered what one aide later described as a master class in restraint. She didn't speak Meghan's name once, the aide recalled, not out of fear, but because naming chaos gives it power. Instead, Anne focused on preservation through behavioral contrast. The family's posture going forward, studied silence, no counterpoints, no emotional rebuttals, no press engagement, just quiet consistency. The goal was clear: let Meghan's theatrics collapse under their own weight. Anne issued what became known as the non-engagement protocol. Simple, clear. The Crown does not duel on social media. The Crown does not chase press cycles. The Crown endures. But Meghan, sensing isolation, doubled down. 3 days after Zara was offered a co-hosting role at Royal Ascot's Style Pavilion, a position once hinted at for Meghan in 2020, Meghan's team issued an indirect warning. A sealed letter was hand-delivered to a London legal firm. The message? If defamatory inferences toward the Duchess continued, she would consider releasing archived digital communications between herself and unnamed senior royals. Palace officials called it the Windsor Files bluff. "She wants them to flinch," a royal council said. "But you can't shake a house built to withstand empire collapse." Anne's recommendation? Ignore it, and they did. What Meghan didn't anticipate was the ripple effect beyond palace walls. Within the fashion industry, especially Europe, her image soured. After the alleged Zara snub and the aggressive PR campaign that followed, luxury houses quietly withdrew future offers. Chanel, once rumored to be in talks for a sustainability collaboration with Meghan, issued a subtle press shift. They promoted an equestrian capsule collection with Zara Tindall as a silent brand ambassador, no announcement. Just a Vogue editorial. Dior and Burberry, both of whom had received direct pressure from Meghan's stylists to include her in spring 2026 campaigns, opted to distance themselves. "She doesn't represent discretion," a French PR director said, "and discretion is our currency." In contrast, Zara's 2026 calendar filled quietly. Co-host of the Royal Charity Polo Invitational, equestrian-led for the Commonwealth Youth Games, featured in Harper's Bazaar UK's Legacy and Lineage issue. She did no outreach, accepted no payment, but the doors opened. She didn't step forward, one fashion editor said. She simply didn't step wrong. The beauty of Zara's response to Meghan's provocations wasn't in cleverness, it was in her refusal to participate. At a Glasgow horse trial, a journalist asked if she'd seen Meghan's latest Instagram reel, one where Meghan wore a replica of Zara's 2022 ascot look with the caption, "Real class needs no bloodline." Zara blinked once, then smiled faintly. "Some of us ride horses, some of us ride headlines. I prefer the former." That quote was picked up by over 300 outlets within 24 hours. Calm, icy, devastating. Even Anne reportedly raised an eyebrow in approval. By the third week of February, Archewell's internal morale hit a historic low. 2 directors resigned. A major investor backed out of a proposed streaming deal. Netflix stopped greenlighting Markle-led pitches. Meghan, sensing backlash, began pivoting to wellness and empowerment. She hinted in podcast interviews that certain royal figures were intimidated by women with a voice. It was widely interpreted as a jab at Zara, but Zara didn't respond. She was already on a plane to Botswana attending a rural economic development program sponsored by the Commonwealth Secretariat. No cameras, no press, just work. That was the final contrast, a palace insider said. One woman trying to threaten her way back into relevance, another becoming relevant by never demanding attention. The public began to choose, and they chose the one who never asked to be chosen. By late February 2026, the walls around Meghan Markle's carefully curated persona had thinned. Her usual arsenal, press exclusives, fashion appearances, victim narratives, no longer yielded viral dominance. Instead, every attempt at reclaiming relevance collided with something more powerful: royal restraint. And at the center of that restraint stood 2 women, Zara Tindall, Princess Anne, who chose silence over spectacle, stability over storm. The first sign came not in a lawsuit or headline, but in a podcast. February 22nd. Meghan appeared on a stateside women's empowerment show titled Undaunted. The teaser was pure Markle, poetic metaphors, velvet voice, controlled outrage. But somewhere between rehearsed lines and off-script emotion, her composure faltered. Some women stay quiet because it's safe, others because they've been taught silence is elegance. But I believe silence, sometimes, is just complicity, especially when you're watching someone be torn apart for being too different. The host nodded politely, but behind the scenes, producers admitted Meghan had rewritten her script 3 times and requested full editorial control, unprecedented for the program. She wasn't empowering, one producer leaked anonymously. She was unraveling. The problem? There was no named villain, no quoted attacks, no scandal to defend against. Just the growing suspicion that the royal women she once mocked were now quietly eclipsing her. Zara had never chased spotlight. Yet in February 2026, she became the most reposted royal on social media, not through official accounts, through user-generated admiration. Clips of Zara helping a disabled child mount a pony at a Gloucestershire charity event went viral. An offhand remark during a Commonwealth panel, "We're not above criticism, but we are above collapse," was printed on tote bags and t-shirts. Fashion blogs called her the aristocratic answer to quiet luxury. TikTok creators dissected her wardrobe: equestrian chic, heirloom brooches, subtle tailoring, always timeless, never performative. In response to a fan comment asking how she managed pressure without drama, Zara's team posted one line: "I grew up in a house where horses had more tantrums than humans." It trended for days. Then, on February 24th, something unexpected happened. Princess Anne wrote to Meghan, not a royal statement, not an official reprimand, a private letter, couriered to Montecito via diplomatic post. Its contents were never publicly released. But a trusted palace source confirmed its tone: composed, direct, moral. Anne's message wasn't an olive branch, nor an attack. It was a reminder. Royalty is not inherited through blood alone. It is earned in the spaces between headlines, in how one endures, not just how one speaks. She invited Meghan quietly to return to the path of public duty, not as a duchess, not as a celebrity, but as a woman capable of choosing legacy over leverage. Meghan never responded. While Zara graced the cover of Country Life, Meghan received a different kind of attention. February 26th, U.S. tax authorities, specifically the IRS Exempt Organizations Division, opened a formal inquiry into Archewell Foundation's grant distribution model. At issue? Discrepancies between donor intent and actual programming. The investigation was triggered by an anonymous whistleblower filing Form 13909, a tax-exempt organization complaint. Allegations included misuse of brand-affiliated travel expenses, donor naming rights conflicts, and inflated PR budgets masked as charitable storytelling. For the first time, scrutiny wasn't coming from British tabloids. It was American, federal, and immune to media spin. Meghan's lawyers issued a vague statement. Archewell Foundation is committed to full transparency and compliance. But internally, panic set in. Former employees were subpoenaed, financial documents requested. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Back in London, preparations were underway, not for retaliation, for defense. Prince William reportedly ordered the Royal Communications Office to update all Sussex-era protocols, flagging potential reputational risks tied to past joint engagements. Princess Catherine advised all patronages under her name to transition softly away from Archewell collaborations. Zara remained uninvolved. When asked by a royal aide whether she wanted to address the Markle tension, her reply was pure Windsor steel. If you know what you're doing, you don't have to explain what you didn't do. Meanwhile, Anne coordinated with Royal Legal Counsel to ensure the monarchy wouldn't be dragged into any U.S. legal discovery processes should Meghan pursue litigation. "We are not players in her story," Anne said. "We are the page she cannot rewrite." A haunting photo emerged from an LA cafe. Meghan alone reflected in a storefront window. The headline? Once the Duchess, now the outcast? I saw. A royal source close to Prince William later commented, "She wanted power. She forgot we don't show it. We hold it." Back in the UK, Zara watched the coverage with quiet indifference. She'd just returned from a 3-day veterinary research conference and was preparing for a royal military charity gala. As she stepped out of her car in a navy cape coat and sapphire brooch, a reporter shouted, "Any words for Meghan?" Zara smiled faintly. "None needed." The crowd applauded. The doors closed behind her, and just like that, the world turned its gaze back to those who chose purpose over performance. Under the morning drizzle of a London spring, Zara Tindall stepped through wrought iron gates. Not as an Olympic equestrian, not as a granddaughter of a queen, but as the newly appointed Special Envoy for Heritage and Sport, a royal position created in honor of her decades-long service to the Commonwealth. No announcement had been made in advance, no photographers tipped. It was Princess Anne's idea. "Let the moment speak for itself," she told palace staff. And it did. Wearing her grandfather Prince Philip's tie pin, restored, reset, and gifted by her mother, Zara stood beside King Charles and accepted the title with a bow of her head and a steady gaze. Her role would now include overseeing royal patronages across Commonwealth youth sporting programs, with special focus on female empowerment and post-trauma equine therapy. No glitz, no cameras backstage. Just service. That same morning, Meghan Markle launched a global live broadcast titled The Cost of Silence, streamed from a luxury loft in downtown Los Angeles. Curated lighting, designer suit, a black and white montage of old Windsor footage playing behind her. She addressed an audience of nearly 500,000, began softly, then sharpened her tone. "The monarchy taught me that dignity was about smiling in silence, but silence is not peace, it's permission." She named no names. But the jabs were clear. She referenced being frozen out of family dinners, watched while others built power by ignoring injustice. She said she chose to walk away rather than wilt. And she ended with a chilling vow, "I will tell my daughter the truth they could not bear to hear from me." Some applauded, others grimaced. But within 24 hours, the broadcast was eclipsed by something Meghan hadn't anticipated. The Royal Archives unveiled a new permanent exhibition inside Windsor Castle, Service in Motion. Among the featured figures, Princess Anne, the late Queen Elizabeth II, and Zara Tindall. Zara's exhibit included letters from girls she'd mentored through charity sport, video clips from military hospital visits, the boots she wore winning gold in the 2012 Olympics, no social media campaign, no sponsorship logos, just impact. Near the exit was a quote from Princess Anne. "Some talk of legacy, others ride it out, rain or shine." It became the most shared line of the week. Meghan was photographed alone, leaving a Los Angeles legal office, documents in hand, lips tight. Insiders claim she's considering filing civil defamation charges against unnamed royal advisors. That same night, Zara and her husband Mike attended a veterans fundraiser at Sandringham. A small girl in a wheelchair approached her. Zara knelt, asked gently. "What's your dream?" The girl replied, "To be brave like you." And Zara smiled. Then I think you already are. No broadcast, no quote cards, no drama, just legacy. And for the first time, the world saw the true divide. One woman chased control of the story, the other became the part history chose to remember. Because in the end, it's not about who speaks loudest, it's about who stands longest, who serves deepest, who loves most quietly. Zara Tindall never needed the crown, she just needed to be herself. And that, it turns out, was more than enough. The handbag? It was returned to Balenciaga, stored, archived, a footnote in fashion history. But the women at the center of this story, they're still standing, still serving, still defining what it means to carry yourself with grace when the world is watching, and dignity when it's not. Some battles are fought with words, others with silence, and sometimes silence wins.